Hi guys, Ashley here. Today I'm bringing you Yassine Regragui, who is working for Deloitte in Paris. For many years, 6 in fact, he was living in mainland China, working for AliExpress and later on for Alipay. Yassine, it's phenomenal to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today.
Yassine, you've been working for the past many years around China, and you understand Chinese cashless society and fintech industry very well. And today, at times of COVID-19, can you give me your overview of what is actually happening right now? What are some of the things that we all need to know about China's cashless transaction into that new world?
Well, I think first of all, what we should know about China is that it's the most advanced country in terms of cashless payments. So the two main actors, of course, are Alipay and WeChat. They offer a very unique experience, of course, on payment, but more than that, because they offer a lifestyle experience. Like we can do everything with Alipay and WeChat. We can talk with a friend. We can pay, of course, in many stores, online or offline, but we can also call a cab, we can also shop online, we can also do everything within the app. So within this period, of course, many people don't want to use cash and card. And myself, during my 6 years in China, I didn't need to use that. And actually, within this period, of course, using these kind of payments with cash and card can probably increase the transmission of the virus. So cashless payment is definitely a good option for that. And Alipay and WeChat Pay in China, they offer this kind of unique experience. On top of that, now, I don't know if you know it, but more and more stores accept the face payment. So you don't even need your phone to pay and just need to smile.
Absolutely. So now you cannot forget your wallet anymore. You cannot forget your phone because your face is always attached. Absolutely. In terms of what's coming next, right now I've seen it coming almost into fruition. China is coming up with their own digital currency and they're recruiting banks to be part of that. So before we go and talk about this competition between, let's say, Alipay, WeChat Pay, and this new digital currency that could potentially really move these two companies into, sideways, tell us, what is this digital currency that China is coming up with and what's the whole buzz about?
Well, the digital currency, it's a normal currency, but on the phone. And as long as China has announced recently through their central bank that they will launch a currency with 7 actors. So 3 banks, UnionPay, which is the card scheme in China, Alipay, and WeChat. So these actors actually will offer through their platforms the possibility for the users to pay directly with their phones. So it can be comparable to Libra in the US and to the soon-to-be launched digital currency in Europe as well. So I think it will be a very big innovation because so far we have been using like the traditional currencies, and now we are in the new era of digital. So we definitely need to have a currency that is adapted with our era. And digital currency in China, I think it will be a big move. And I think one bank has recently launched sort of tests on an app that helps you to transfer money within a digital currency ecosystem. And actually, you can even use 2 phones to transfer money, like with contactless. So this is one of the innovations they can offer. And I think it's a big room for new innovations. And I think that this decade will be full of surprises in terms of fintech and digital currencies. Indeed.
This is very exciting. Essentially, for those people that are watching us right now, digital currency is probably more difficult to understand because when we right now go into our bank account, be it HSBC or whatever, on our account, we still see the digits, right, which is the digital currency, but it's still linked to the cash reserve. Is that correct? So how will this digital currency be truly different from the way we are using currency right now?
Well, I think for someone who doesn't know really what is digital currency, it can be comparable to maybe some credits on a certain game or credits in a certain loyalty cards. So for example, today we can use our bank card that is linked to our bank account, and it helps us to withdraw cash, etc. So it's a whole ecosystem of physical and digital system. However, the digital currency, it's only on a digital platform. So the central bank will try to create some digital currency, and therefore all the actors I mentioned, banks, card scheme, and digital wallets, will be able to give the possibility for their clients to use this digital currency.
And
so
how soon do you
more or
feel?
less
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's more or less the same as the normal currency. However, it's only online. So this is a very big innovation indeed.
How soon do you feel that cash will disappear in mainland China?
Well, I think the cash is still present. It will probably not disappear within the coming years, for sure. In fact, we see more and more people using the cashless systems. And myself, when I was hiking in the mountain in a very far village in China, I had to use my phone to pay. So also these places accept this kind of digital payments. So I think that cash is also a big revenue for banks. So actually, it cannot disappear from a day to another one, definitely not. And it represents also a cost for the state. So I think step by step, it can be replaced, but not 100%. If we see the example of Sweden, so Sweden have only less than 4% of cash usage. But the population is, of course, lower than China. But by, I think, the coming years, we can see a lower usage of cash indeed in China.
And paper money, that's beautiful. Let's talk about the globalization of fintech and what's happening in that space right now. Are a lot of innovations coming out of Asia and China, or there are some other hubs that are specifically focusing on this area?
Sure. So I think China is definitely one example that we can take in terms of innovations in terms of fintech. And we can say that it's the wave coming from China going to the rest of the world. And the example I want to take is Asia, is Southeast Asia, because now we see more and more wallets like Paytm in India, or Gojek in Indonesia, or Grab in Singapore. So these wallets actually, they offer a similar experience than in China. We call them super apps because they include a lot of services, payments, and lifestyle. If we take the example of Alipay and Ant Financial, which is the company that is leading Alipay, actually it counts 1.2 billion users. And 300 million of these users are coming from wallets, partners of Ant Financial in Southeast Asia. So it can be like Dana in Indonesia, it can be Paytm, etc. And all of these wallets, actually, they use more or less the same technology as Alipay. So these strategies of globalization of Ant Financial, which is Techfin, we don't talk about fintech, because fintech is more like a financial service that use technology to offer their services, but Techfin is more about technology company that is offering financial services. For example, Apple Pay. Apple is a technology company, and Apple Pay is a Techfin. So I think that more and more we'll see this Techfin ecosystem that is developing. Google is planning also to launch its own Techfin firm. So I think it's offering a lot of great opportunities for banks to disrupt their services, but also for users to have new services and the new lifestyle.
And out of global firms that are doing Techfin, you mentioned Alipay, you mentioned Apple. Out of those global firms, which one is your personal favorite? Which one do you feel is doing best?
Well, I will say my favorite is Alipay. First, because I used to work for Alipay for a couple of years in China. and it's because it's the one that is offering the largest number of financial services. So Ant Financial actually offers either payments, credit, loans, micro loans, banking, insurance. Basically, it's all the financial services. And actually, Ant Financial today is like valuated as 150 billion US dollars, which is actually more than Barclays and like another bank in France together, which means that it's only 5 years old and the weight is really, really, really high. And it's one of the 10 largest banks in the world. So it's digital, 100% digital. 6 years ago, we didn't even hear about that. And today it's offering a very unique experience. And I personally love it. It can be comparable to WeChat in China, but Alipay is more offering like a very, very large amount of financial services.
That's right. And what about regulations? Because essentially, very early on, when let's say Alibaba as a company was just set up and people were using Taobao to purchase things, one reason why people had trust in the platform was the fact that I give the platform the money and the platform only releases the money to merchant once I receive the product. And essentially, for many years, Alibaba, or in that sense, Taobao, was acting as a bank, as an intermediary, as giving kind of credit notes, right? And a lot of Western observers, they say, well, that is kind of, in the West wouldn't be possible because you need to have a banking license. It's a regulated industry because you're handling so much cash. And the rise of this whole digital e-commerce and Alibaba as a company also happened because it moved so fast. And there was a lot of flexibility and they didn't have to get those financial licenses and they didn't have to be registered as a bank in order to provide that service. So what happens right now? Do you believe that the success of, let's say, Ant Financial or WeChat ecosystems or, Alibaba ecosystems when it comes to payments is also due to more relaxed regulations or the lack of regulations? Or is it a combination of technology, environment, people, all these things?
Well, it's a very good question because regulations, I think, are always present in financial services, especially when we talk about technology, because everyone cares about his personal data. So behind, we need to protect them. A very simple example I will take is the KYC, like the Know Your Customer process. In order to verify your account on Alipay or WeChat, you need to connect your bank account, your bank card with the wallet, but you can also upload your ID or passport in order to get verified. So there is a certain security and a guarantee that I'm the right person using the wallet. So this is the first thing. Then actually all these platforms need to have a license, a banking license. And what we see more and more is that actors that were not doing financial services before, today they are applying for a banking license or a payment license. So I took the example of the GAFA or any other retailer today can also offer his payment solution. Starbucks can offer his payment solution. And it's very exciting because anyone can offer his payment solution. Maybe in 10 years, I have my company, I can launch my own payment system and using the digital currency that is available there. So regulations are here not to stop the evolution of payments, but it's here to rhythm it, to put a pace and to protect the consumers and to put the big rules that can be affected each of these services.
And when you talk about everybody being able to issue their own currency, like Starbucks having their currency and then Google having theirs and Apple having theirs and then Ashley having her currency, would that create unnecessary complexity? Or do you think it's actually helping us for whatever we're building in the future?
Well, I think it's not a currency, but a payment system. So the currency will be the same in each country. However, Ashley's card
payment system
can help actually to build more and more trust with consumers. For example, I'm a customer of of Starbucks. And every time I will go to Starbucks, I will use my Starbucks card to pay. So definitely it will give me some reward points, and Starbucks will know the customer better and will offer a better experience. So actually the payment is not the end of an experience as we can think about, but it's the beginning of a payment experience, of a whole experience. And a client is not a client if he doesn't pay. So once he pays, then he becomes a client. And actually this is a point that retailers understand, and offering their own payment solutions will help them control the whole value chain and make customers more and more happy about it. Mm-hmm. And actually the customer satisfaction is the most important point, because at the end it's the client who pays. So if the client doesn't pay, then we cannot generate business and we cannot generate revenue.
Oh, that's a very interesting version of the future. What's your take on blockchain?
Well, everyone talks about blockchain, about Bitcoin, about all the cryptocurrencies, etc. I think it's a very innovative model created with the Bitcoin. China is investing a lot on it. If I take the example of Ant Financial, it has launched a technology to transfer money from a country to another one. So from Hong Kong to Philippines using the blockchain. So this is one of the ways to use blockchain. But people generally think that it's only related to finance, but actually it can relate to any other industry. So it's good from a moment that it will guarantee the trust. And the big challenge of tomorrow is the trust, I think, because more and more people will probably lose trust in their countries, in their governments, in their friends, etc. And the only way to do it is probably using the blockchain to guarantee this trust.
Yeah, that's trust is very important, and especially in market like China, talking about blockchain, a lot of the technology is used to verify the origin of the product. Even talking about one other player within Alibaba ecosystem, Fresh Hippo, they have the fish that you're purchasing in Fresh Hippo, and it has a little chip QR code which you scan, and you can essentially see the tracker that, okay, this particular fish or this particular lobster came from whatever coast of Australia, and it is number 167 in the pond number 4. And it's really, really interesting, right? People want that trust. Another question would be, what are the changes in the whole, let's say, cashless payments, this payment system in China that occurred during COVID-19? What actually happened? What's different? How did these payment systems support the whole market? What did they do?
Well, if I take the example that I know the most, again, Alipay, they offered within their platform a full report of what's happening within the COVID-19. So in live, I can know in each location, for example, now in France, I can see how many cases, how many deaths, etc. I also have the possibility to buy masks. So directly it's connected with AliExpress platform if I'm in France. And if for users based in China, they can also purchase that. And they can also communicate with their doctor. They can chat with a certain community of patients. And it's basically using technology and health tech in order to fight together against that. And Alibaba also had a lot of initiatives related to COVID-19 and trying to help through their platforms, either Tmall, Alipay, Tainiao, etc., on trying to improve the current situation. So I think within Alipay and cashless payment, if we take only the payment part, people will be more and more conscious about the fact that we cannot use cash because it's probably dangerous and we have to wash our hands. I give you just an example. The bakery downstairs on my place here in Paris don't want to accept cash anymore because they think it's dirty. So we have to use either our card, but myself, I prefer to use, for example, Apple Pay because I cannot use Alipay here. And this is an example on how usage will change. And if I do it, probably my parents will do it and my grandparents will do it. So it's about generations, but it will take time. And I'm I'm definitely sure that this is a new wave, and the COVID-19 will bring a new wave to the payments.
Mm-hmm. And talking about broader innovation, what other innovation are you really excited about coming out of Asia, China, this part of the world in the coming, let's say, year or two? What are you personally watching in the tech era?
Well, I'm personally watching how AI, of course, everyone talks about AI and blockchain, but how AI is trying to be more and more connected to our daily life. And if we talk about payments as well, as it's my expertise, uh, these technologies try to make payments invisible. So we take example of a store. Today you enter a store, you take your product and you leave. So we don't have to think anymore of payments. And I think within the coming years, the payments will be more and more invisible because the client doesn't want to think about it. We take the example of Didi in China or Uber. When you call Uber, you enter the cab and you leave it. You don't even think of payments, and you don't even maybe know exactly how much you pay until you check the bill. So these new innovations, I think, bring a unique experience that will be more and more applied in different industries, not only transportation, but it can also be connected, of course, to AI, as I mentioned about the face recognition. So I'm really excited about it. People probably can think that it's like data privacy related thing and it's complicated to do, but I believe that everyone probably in the next 5 years will be able to pay with his face. But we need to
Doesn't
have a
matter
big
where
smile.
they are in the world. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. My last question would really be that, and it's a bit broader. I would like to know, what do you feel at this stage in 2020 China still has to learn from the rest of the world? And what shall the rest of the world still learn from China?
Well, I think China today is definitely learning more and more about the rest of the world because it has opened for the last 30 years uh, with the WTO, etc. And we can see definitely on the way of shopping, on the way of consuming, uh, and just taking an example of people speaking English. This is a big move. So, of course, China needs to learn more and more on how other culture behave, what are the restrictions of the other culture, etc. So, culturally speaking. However, I think the bigger move should be from the rest of the world to China because I think most of people don't speak Chinese. They don't probably know exactly the Chinese culture. There are many interesting things about it. Unfortunately, media will not talk all the time positively about China. And this is personally the experience that I got. It's like the first year I went to China, I was really surprised and saw that it was different than all what I could see before. So I think the bigger move should be from the rest of the world to China, but not to copy China or China copy the world. It's more about inspiration, how we can learn from each other to build a better world, to build better technologies, and without thinking of like creating our own things in our side without creating some synergies. So this is my own vision.
That's beautiful. And when you look at the world as a whole, do you also agree that China and the rest of the world are somehow developing in slightly, digitally speaking, different directions? China is jumping onto new technology, implementing it, and becoming very digital very fast. When there is more and more resistance happening in many other, especially let's say, non-Asian countries.
Well, of course, there are some differences, especially in terms of innovations and how advanced is the innovation, especially digital, because China, first, they had access to a lot of data and they could improve their technologies based on that data. And AI is definitely linked to data. So the more data you get, the better the AI is. However, when we see how the rest of the world will not be alone and create its own things, and there are something that China can definitely help. So China is advanced, definitely advanced compared to the rest of the world, digitally speaking. I'm not sure that other countries will not reach this level, but I think within the 10 coming years, China will definitely be ahead because I just take the example of digital. Everyone now is using the phone to do everything in China. When you see the number of hours spent on the phone compared to the rest of the world is crazy. And there is something that more and more Western companies think about is, what can I learn from the Chinese success? And before, they didn't think about it. And they are discovering how China is innovative. And what we call the new China, or how you call it, actually, the new normal, is a new normal. And everyone trying to copy, etc. But it's more about inspiration, and it's more about how we can combine all the resources.
I totally agree with you. And you're working for one of the largest tech consultants and generally consulting company groups in the world. So you must be working with a lot of companies like this. I'm also personally, through my practice, consulting one of the largest tech companies in the world. They are learning from China. They want to know what are the new things that are being introduced now post COVID-19, what was happening in all these different ecosystems, because China does not just build products or companies. They truly build comprehensive ecosystems that are like operating systems for life in all these various areas. And there are not too many ecosystems. There are just a few, but they are very different, and they are extremely competitive, and they are very digital, and they are just going and implementing every single thing, most of the ideas that they have. And essentially tech companies around the world definitely want to, as you said, learn from it and get inspired in order to also build a better joint future.
Exactly. And just to finish with this part, because it's very interesting what you are saying, and actually the biggest difference I feel between the way of creating things in China and creating things in the rest of the world. In China, there is no problem of making mistakes, actually. So the biggest move is about making money as fast as possible. However, the way to do it, and we make it, if it fails, it fails. If it succeeds, perfect. We'll invest more on it. However, in the rest of the world, we'll probably plan for a long time. We'll try to make a lot of assumptions, etc. And this is the reason why we are maybe not agile enough, we're not adaptable enough. And I think there are a lot of things of management related to China that we can learn from, definitely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Yassine. It was awesome to have you on the show. Guys, stay tuned for more China experts to come to learn about new realities in China post-COVID-19.